Hey everybody, Molly Winkle from Big Block Realty here. We put together this series of classes in short, digestible form for you to enjoy and learn from as your business grows. Let's get started. So when we talk about how to win a bidding war, right, we are talking about this from the buyer's agent's perspective, obviously, but one of the things, or a couple of the things that we want to make sure that we do, we are recording, right? Okay, thanks. But anyway, so some of the things that we want to do in order to win the bidding war is we want to first and foremost actually call or contact the listing agent. You want to find out things that are not necessarily in there. You want to establish some sort of a rapport with the listing agent, because if the listing agent likes you, quite frankly, they're going to root for you. They're going to try and get that deal done for you and try to work with you. You want to make sure that you find out what's important. We were just talking about an SPRP, right? Which is the seller to find the replacement property. That one, if your seller has to find a replacement property, are they willing to go into a rental so that we can go ahead and close and maybe we give them a couple of extra weeks? Or are we going to be in escrow while they're looking for a property? And when are our timelines going to begin? In the beginning or once they go into escrow? There are a lot of details that come into play. Does your buyer have a house to sell contingency? And is that seller prepared to let them take the time to sell their own property? What's most important to the sellers, right? Is it time or money? Sometimes having a 14-day escrow does not work. I know this personally. I've got buyers. We are ready to go with a 14-day escrow. Cannot get into a property because it's too fast, okay? So you want to make sure, what is it? Is it time and or money or both or whatever? Do they need a rent back? Do they need to get out early? Does your buyer need to get in early? I don't suggest that. So you want to find out what is important to the seller, and then let the listing agent word vomit all over you and give you all kinds of information, because they will give you more information than you know what to do with. But information is king, and that's what's going to help you in the bidding war. The other thing is to talk about the timelines, right? Now, inspection timelines, you need to, number one, understand your timelines and understand what you can and cannot do. Shortening an appraisal contingency down to 5 days is kind of stupid, okay? Because you're at the mercy of the appraiser and they have 10 days to get it done. So that's kind of dumb. Writing in the wrong loan type. If you don't understand that that condo is not a VA approved condo, don't take your VA buyer there, number one. But number two, you want to find out why. Why is this not VA approved? The complex is not approved. You know, okay, we can change loan types, or we need to just move on to the next one. Or what do you have on the table? My buyer is conventional. Does that matter? Are we up against cash? Sometimes sellers will take less money if it's cash versus more money and more time. So you want to write your offer in a way that makes it make sense for the seller to want to accept your offer. The other thing is understanding the appraisal and the appraisal gap, right? Things that right now we are finding issue with is the appraisal, is properties are not appraising correctly. They're kind of all over the map. I've had some come in that I thought there's no way in hell it's going to appraise, and miraculously it appraised. I've had others that we thought, no problem, 70,000 short. So you just don't know really what is going to happen with the appraisal. And so you want to make sure that when you're writing up your offer, you write in verbiage that will help should the property, I'm trying to write this and think at the same time, it doesn't really work, right? So you want to write up the appraisal gap. What I mean by that is I write in a guarantee. So the line is, should the property not appraise at contract price, buyer guarantees to make up the difference not to exceed X number of dollars. Okay? So, should the property not appraise at contract price, buyer guarantees to make up the difference not to exceed $10,000, $20,000. The one that I took yesterday, $50,000. Do I think that we're going to have an appraisal issue at $50,000? No, I don't. But this wording here, to me, is better than removing the appraisal contingency. Removing the appraisal contingency means when it comes up $20,000 short, you want to renegotiate with me because it came up $20,000 short, or you want to use Megan's Law to get out of it, or you're going to use the loan contingency, or you're going to find another way, because I promise you, I'm going to find a way to get out of it, and I'm going to teach you how to do that as well. But if you write it this way, number one, there's very little ambiguity here. The buyer guarantees to make up the difference not to exceed $50,000. It comes up $70,000 short. Does anything in here say that the seller has to lower that price? No. Now, what's the difference between that and buyer will pay X number of dollars over appraised value not to exceed contract price? Did I write that right? Yes. I want it obvious that these are two different statements. Don't write that second one down. I don't ever, ever, ever want you to write this, because that is very ambiguous. Buyer will pay X number of dollars over appraised value not to exceed contract price. In other words, when they say the buyer will pay $10,000 over the appraised value and it comes up $70,000 short, the buyer's expectation is that the seller will lower to what they've asked for. And to be honest with you, that's what this says. That's what that says. The buyer's going to pay $10,000 over whatever the appraised value comes back at, not to exceed this contract price. Are you catching how I'm wording that? So what this one says is that if it doesn't appraise at the contract price, the buyer will make up the difference, but the max amount that they will make up is this much money. That's what they've guaranteed. Anything above and beyond that, it kind of leaves it more to where it's open for discussion. This one right here, buyer will pay X number of dollars over the appraised value. So seller will accept X number of dollars over the appraised value, not to exceed contract price. There is a difference. And I bring this one up because we actually found ourselves in this situation on a deal, and it did not appraise, and this is what was written in. And the buyer's agent was fighting like hell to say that the seller had to lower the price. Now, had the seller, this is a reason why I bring this up, according to Car Legal, the buyer's agent wrote this and it's too ambiguous, and therefore the mistake lies with the buyer's agent, with the buyer. So the seller could basically interpret it how they wanted to. Had the listing agent countered with this verbiage here, the sellers would have to lower the price because the fault lies with the author. Okay, so these are some of the details that you really want to understand when you are trying to win a bidding war and you're trying to make sure that you're still protecting your client. Okay, so this is how, right? So I don't ever want you to write this in there. Don't write that one. Okay, this is how I want you to write it, because this leaves very little left to the imagination. That's the biggest reason why. Okay, so you've got the appraisal gap and guarantee. This eraser is not good. You've got the appraised value and the guarantee that you've got coming from the buyers of what they're going to pay. And then you have the listing agent that absolutely, positively wants you to remove the appraisal contingency. and you try to explain, because I have tried to explain, that how I'm wording it is better for your seller because we're basically negotiating out right now. If I say my buyer will make up any difference not to exceed $100,000, that means when it comes in $80,000 short, my buyer has already agreed to make up the difference contractually. That to me is better than an appraisal, than a release of the appraisal contingency fully, and then the money gets too big, and now what do? Right? Now they're just weaseling out, and no expectation has been set with your seller, and the buyer's heartbroken, and they weren't prepared to make up the difference. So this is the reason why I like it worded this way. When you run into the listing agent that says, no appraisal contingency. All right. This is my favorite. No appraisal contingency. 17-day inspection.
The appraisal comes in lower and you have 17 and you walk up.
Boom. This literally happened to me with my own purchase in Big Bear. Was the listing agent and I had a discussion. How do you want me to write this up? I said, I'm willing to give you a guarantee, but I'm not willing to release the appraisal contingency. She said, Molly, everybody else was releasing the appraisal contingency. I don't even agree with it, but my clients, that's what they want to have happen. All right. Not a problem. So I write it up. I don't give them a guarantee. And then we put the appraisal on rush. And we got the appraisal back in like 6 days, y'all. Did you know that your buyer can spend a couple of $100, like $200 to $400, let's just say, extra dollars, and have their appraisal moved to the top of the line and get it back quickly? So you put it on a rush, and then if it's 10 days of an inspection period, which is what we normally get countered, right? 10-day inspection, awesome. So she did not, in my particular story, she did not counter the number of days of inspection. So I'm like, cool, I've got 17 days. The appraisal contingency, or the appraisal comes back, at $25,000 short. And I call her up and I was like, hey, this is what happened. I'm going to cancel based on paragraph 14 because I don't like the wall color anymore. Or you can talk to your sellers about what are they willing to do. And we did end up coming to an agreement that worked out fine for everyone except for the buyer's agent, because to be perfectly honest, the seller's agent, they lowered the listing agent's compensation in order to make the deal happen. And I was like, wow, that sucks for you, but awesome for me. Thank you very much. So this is how we were able to do it, because it's how you're writing offers in order to protect your client and still win the bidding war. You want to be able to promise things that you can do without over-promising and putting your buyer in a position where they can't get out of it or they're committing to something that they actually cannot do. I had this happen recently. One of my agents wrote in, should the property not appraise at contract price, buyer guarantees to make up the difference not to exceed $5,000. Guess what? Buyer doesn't have the $5,000 extra dollars. Oops. So you want to make sure, this is another reason why when you talk to your clients, you want to figure out what are you financially capable of doing, and then you structure the offer to make that make sense. And if you absolutely positively have to release the appraisal contingency, then you try and extend the inspection contingency, and then you put the appraisal on rush. The other thing, if you have a conventional offer or an FHA offer, buyer, and you write in the termite, you lost. You lost. Because I can still get it in later, right? But if you ask for it up front, you're asking me to ask my sellers to write a blank check. Hey, we want section 1 clearance. Awesome. I haven't done an inspection, and so I don't know if it's $500 worth of damage, $10,000 worth of damage, and anywhere in between, right? I have no idea. So you know what? No, I'm not going to take that, because the minute you ask for, on an FHA offer, the minute that you ask for a termite inspection, the lender wants the clearance, regardless of who is going to pay for it. So now you're in a pissing contest. Who's going to pay for that? For a conventional offer, you don't need to do that, right? What you can do as a buyer's agent is you don't write in anything in regards to the termite, and then you order the termite inspection as part of the inspection period, and then you ask for it in the request for repairs along with every other repair that you're asking for. So that's how you're able to win these offers when you're writing it in. I just took one. It was $5,000 over our other offer that we had on the table. The other one wrote in, as is sale, and then tells me, Molly, we're not asking for anything unless there's something major wrong. I'm like, yeah, there's nothing major wrong, because guess what? We've already had an appraisal on this property, and here's that report. Let me send that to you. He's like, we're good with it. The other one comes in $5,000 over that one, but they asked for termite section 1, termite clearance. They asked for, she left all the inspection contingencies, or the contingency timelines, she left all of them in place, right? They all defaulted. Good on her for trying. And then she did exactly what I asked her not to do, which was to release the appraisal contingency. And I'm like, no, I specifically told you not to do that, and I asked you to write it up this specific way. So who did my sellers choose? They chose the offer that was $5,000 less, but the terms were set up in the exact manner that I wanted them set up in, because my sellers trust me to protect their best interests. And so that's how we were able to get through that. And the lower offer is the one that actually won the bidding war, because they listened to the listing agent. So these are some little tricks and tips and stuff like that you want to be able to use. Just because you release the inspection contingency, which, by the way, do not ever do that, please. But just because someone releases the inspection contingency with you as the listing agent doesn't mean they don't intend to inspect the property, or that they can't inspect the property. They still have their inspection period, or their investigations period, where they can look into things. So that's the part where you want to understand on both sides of this deal. How do you win a bidding war? You win it by thinking about how each step is going to take place, and how do you say what you want them to hear and still get what you want. I still want section 1 clearance. I'm going to ask for it in the request for repairs. I still am going to use the appraisal contingency, even though I'm waiving the appraisal contingency. Y'all realize paragraph 14 I can change, because I no longer like that the walls are green. I changed my mind. I don't want to buy paint anymore. Okay. There are so many ways that people can get out of an offer, but you need to be able to get into escrow before you can even begin negotiating things. So everyone needs to think about things smartly. And the biggest thing that I have always said is, with the appraisal contingency, rush the appraisal, drag out the inspection. The listing agent thinks that they've worked these miracles, and in reality, I'm still going to win. So keep that in mind whenever you're talking about how you're going to win the bidding war. Think about what you're up against and what you can do to still get what you want, and write it up that way. And always, always, always communicate with the listing agent to find out what's important to the seller and what they're really looking for, because that's what's going to help you win the bidding war. Thanks.